Okay, it
Your
says
show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Well, good evening, folks. This is Dave Schmidt. I'm your host here again tonight on the Sedona Connection. It's a pleasure to be back with you again this week, and thank you for allowing me to be gone last week. I had a pretty important business meeting that I had to take care of, and then also the next day I was on the Big Bird, off to Baltimore. I was there for 5 days. We had a wonderful workshop in Baltimore over the weekend, and thank you everybody that showed up there in Baltimore. It was an absolutely wonderful day. We did have a few no-shows because of the major storm. I mean, they had that big, huge snowstorm that hit the Northeast. Well, we just missed it in Baltimore. It poured down rain on Saturday night. But up in New York and Boston, they were getting hit hard with the snow. So there were some people that were driving up from, even up north of New York City that said, we better not come. We better stay here because we want to make sure we can get back home. So, but it was a great weekend, and we really appreciate that. And again, let's see, 2 weeks from this coming weekend, I'm going to be in Santa Ana in Southern California in Orange County. And folks, let's see, I probably have about, about another 20 to 25 seats left that is there. So if you want to make sure that you want to come to Santa Ana, I would encourage you to make sure that you sign up in the next, 3 to 5 days. We could end up selling out in about a week on a normal basis. But right now, I've got about 20 to 25 seats. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know exactly how many, but that's where we are, okay? And I sent out a newsletter today that announced that I am hosting a workshop for Gary and Cindy Renard here in Sedona on March 23rd. Now, I have said many times here on the program, and I always say it in the workshop, the one book that has changed my life more than anything else is Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. And I am consistently hearing from people saying, Dave, I took your advice, I read the book, and you're absolutely right. I haven't found anybody that's been disappointed when they read that book. It will show you a whole complete different picture of how this world works and why we're here and what our purpose is. And when you look at that, when you're ready for it, it will change your life. I would highly encourage you to at least read that book. Well, I've become good friends with Gary and Cindy, and this is my 4th year in a row that I will be hosting them, and it's their workshop. But let me make a little side note here, because I've already gotten some emails today saying, wait a minute, February 23rd, you're in Sedona with the workshop. March 23rd, you're in Sedona with the workshop. Yes, but if you read the newsletter, they aren't the same, folks. I'm amazed how many people, they don't read it, they just browse it or scan it, and then they assume it, and they get all kinds of questions, and they don't read the details, okay? Read the newsletter. February 23rd is my regular workshop here in Sedona, and my guest will be Michael Lee Hill. For those of you, who've attended the workshops, I talk about Michael. I've had him here on the program a couple of years ago. He was here in Sedona at one time. We had him in Dallas and Cleveland, and another one, I'm trying to remember where. But Michael Lee is going to be here for the workshop in Sedona on February 23rd. Now, folks, also, would you please read the information on the registration page? I'm amazed how many of you are emailing and saying, is there still room for Sedona? Folks, I haven't even put the registration out yet. I opened the registration for a workshop about 3 weeks prior to the event. I don't take any reservations until then. So, but that's February 23rd. And then also on my list, so let me see, we got 2 weeks in Santa Ana. Then 2 weeks after that, we're in St. Louis. The week after that, I'm here in Sedona with Michael Lee. And then the week after that, I get to go to Norway, folks. They've invited me to be their guest. And you could still go if you want to, but you got to get your flight, and then you're paying for a 2-day cruise on a ship, because that's where it's going to take from. So it gets a little spendy if you're coming from the States to go there. And then Charlotte, and then I'm here in Sedona with Gary and Cindy, and then in Puerto Rico on March 30th. And remember, all the dates are always posted on the newsletter and also on the website. But that's the general stuff. But before I go any more, I should say, Miss Blanca, how are you doing this fine evening?
Doing very well, Dave. Thank you. And boy, you've got some exciting destinations coming up. So the Oslo, Norway, is your session actually going to be on the cruise?
Yes. Uh, you know, John is the name of the man who organizes the folks in Norway, and they have an organized group of people, and they pay a lot of attention, to my programs, and they're ready for project funding and stuff.
Right.
And they have their annual meeting, and it's their annual meeting, and so they set sail out of Oslo, and they go on a cruise ship for 2 days. And so their first day is a lot of their business meetings, and then you have a day you go into port and you get to spend about 4 or 5 hours on shore, and then you come back. And then on the second day,
Wow.
they'll have me for about 6 hours, 5, 6 hours for the workshop. And then we get back in, and then the next day I'm back on the flight back home. So, yeah.
Wow.
And instead of flying out of Phoenix, I'm actually going to drive over to Los Angeles, and I fly out of LA because it's a nonstop flight from LA to London. And then I change planes in London, from London to Oslo. That's what I do. And flights are much better,
nice.
much better
That's
price.
So nice
Yeah.
So nice to have those folks in Oslo be so interested, and that's a pretty nice venue. So if someone happens to be over there and they can attend, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, they basically say anybody can come, and they've already opened it up, to folks in Europe. They have a lot of contact with folks in Sweden because remember, Norway and Sweden, the borders, they're right direct with each other, so they're kind of like neighbors. It's almost like two different states for us. And they pretty much speak the same language. Yes, there's Nordish and yes, there's Swedish, but the older languages are almost the same, and so they can understand each other with both of their languages, even though the modern versions are just a little bit different. But it's a little different though, when you're in Europe now, because everybody speaks English as well. Because all the children, English was mandatory for all the children, when they were in schools, and it's been that way for decades now. So that's the language that they speak with each other. And it was interesting because, see, when I was in Amsterdam, and the people are speaking Dutch, and they said basically Dutch has basically become a dead language. They only speak it to each other inside their country. Outside of it, you don't speak. There's not spoken hardly anywhere. Well, Norwegian and Swedish and Denmark, it's the same for those folks as well. So a lot of the European languages are kind of slowly fading away. They have it. Maybe it's what I call, an intercultural thing where they know how to speak it to each other in their own country, but yet they're very fluent. I remembered the first time I went to Amsterdam, and I basically, I was saying, and I had people from all over Europe. I had people from 18 countries, and I was thinking, okay, folks, I'm here. I know most of you speak other languages. Now, if I talk too fast or if you can't understand me, please let me know. And this one wonderful lady says, Dave, we all listen to your radio program. As long as you talk like that, you're just fine. She's like, we wouldn't be here, if we weren't listening to your radio program. That's how we know about you. As long as you talk like you talk on the radio, you're just fine. We'll do just fine. I thought, yeah. It was
that worked.
One of those humbling moments is what it was. So, but the people were just absolutely great, and that was the first time I was there, and then I went back to Amsterdam again, last September. So I've been to Europe 3 times in the last year and a half. So this will be 4 times for me in just a little less than 2 years. So it's quite interesting. So
that's terrific.
Yeah,
that's really terrific. And they're very fluent in English. They can speak it very well. It's admirable. But I hope they keep their own languages too, because that's a cultural thing.
Of course they will.
And it's beautiful. The languages are beautiful.
Yeah, they will. It's just it's really. Europe has changed. I remember when I went there in college, as you went from country to country, you had to stop at the border, show your passports, and go through all that stuff. Today, you're in your car driving. You don't even know when you cross the border. There are no border stations of the Euro countries anymore. I remembered when I was in Amsterdam, I had one day I drove to Paris, and I barely knew I was in France. And then the next day I wanted to go visit a place in Germany that was only 2 hours away. And there wasn't even hardly a sign that said, "Welcome to Germany," when you drove through on the freeway into the country. I should say the Autobahn.
Wow. Right.
Because, the speed limits, in Netherlands was fairly high. But then when you cross into Germany, it's like, zoom, they do 120 and 130 miles an hour. You learn to stay in the right lane all the time. And only when you're going to pass do you get into the left lane, because otherwise somebody's zipping right by you. But they really get it, and they're very well coordinated, and they understand it. They do much better there than what we do in being able to respect the faster traffic of the left lane. And because, if you're in the left lane doing 80 miles an hour and they come up and you doing 100, they're flashing their lights at you. Get over, move over. And that's how they tell you, move over. They flash their bright lights at you, is what they do. And it's just commonly accepted. And, so it's just, that's the culture in the German Autobahn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah. But
it sounds like 400 over here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
we have Highway 400 and people do that to us. So
But so that's my schedule for up until the end of March, and I haven't been to Puerto Rico in about 3 or 4 years. It'd be nice to go there. To be a pleasure to be back. When I first started doing the workshops, my third workshop was in Puerto Rico with James Mendez, who hosted it there. And so we'll be making coordination to go back there. And so it'd be interesting to be back in Puerto Rico. And I haven't been there for a while, but hopefully they're not totally yet recovered from the hurricane, but it's they're getting there.
Oh, okay.
They're getting there. They were just devastated by the hurricane. So because I was going to go there last year, and I thought, no, I need to give this some time to recover. So but that's it. So anything else you'd like to share with us tonight, Blanca?
Well, I got your newsletter, and sounds like you're going to give us some background on this currency exchange and give us some deeper context about it. And I'd like to hear, why you get inspired to do that, why you think it's important to share this. I know part of it is because you're constantly getting new listeners and you want them to understand what's going on, but I'm sure you're inspired to share this with folks for a reason.
Sure. Well, we're dealing with an area that there's still a very high number of people think we're crazy. They don't say that's not going to happen. They can't believe that this gold is out there and this money is going to be out there and it's going to be released. And they have a lot of trouble believing that. If you give them solid, confirmable, tangible information about where it is and how I got there, what's the purpose for it, and what's the reason why we're doing all this, it really helps solidify the confidence in the people that are participating in this, and it helps them feel much more assured and confident themselves to be able to share it with others. Because they can say, well, if you don't think this is going to happen, well, go listen to Dave's program, this one night where he talks about the history, or understand where this is. Because at the end of the day, remember, folks, it's all about the money. And I say, follow the money, because we're still getting all kinds of reports of people that are showing up on the blog sites, and they never talk about where the money's coming from. And what I've learned is some of those are deliberate, intentional traps trying to entrap people, and they're clueless about the money, but they talk about it as though we're all getting 800 numbers and going in there, and you're going to go in there and walk out a multimillionaire, if not a billionaire, I thought, well, fine, but who's got the money to pay that? And they will never address or talk about that. And that's where I've really tried to make sure that my information is solid and tangible and where all this comes from. And so tonight's program is basically going to help us understand that and give some assurance and confidence to the whole purpose of why we're here and why we're doing this. So, yeah.
Right. Cool. Well, that's good. The notion that, some people, and I know because I've helped you with registration, and some of the people even said, well, my family thinks I'm crazy, or they don't understand why I'm into this. So they can refer them to your presentation, and they'll get a little bit more information and background about what this is about. So
sure.
That's good.
Okay, then. Anything else you want to share with us before we get started?
No, I think we're ready to go.
All righty. Okay. So before I talk about the history of the gold and the funds and the money and where it's coming from and why we have it, I want to talk about first a bigger perspective of what's going on and what's happening with us in this world. We are right in the middle of a historical history change for the human race. We go through various cycles, and David Wilcock really explains that very well in his book Synchronicity Keys about history repeats itself on a cyclical manner over hundreds or thousands of years, and you see this happening all the time. And we're right now, and what he talks about this also in his new book as well as that one, is that the large history cycles are the 26,000 year cycles. Now it's a rounded number is what it is. And the whole concept of astrology is based around all the different, houses of the zodiac. And when you go through those, you go through all of those over a 26,000 year period. And we just shifted into the age of Aquarius. And that date, again, was that December 21st, 2012 date. And something happens on that date. All the planets in our solar system line up in a single line with the center of the galaxy. And this only happens once every 26,000 years. And it's like, okay, we finished this one, boom, we're right here, let's go and start it again, another cycle. It's kind of very similar to when you reboot your computer. All these planets are rebooting and their energy and everything that is there and all that kind of stuff. Well, what happens in these 26,000 year cycles also, humanity goes through a major shift, a huge major shift. And that's what's happening. And it doesn't just happen, boom, overnight. It builds up for maybe 100 to 200 years before and then carries over to 100 to 200 years after. And if you think we haven't been through a major shift and change, a change of an era, a change of an age, all you got to do is look back at our world 150 years ago. See, 150 years ago, we were just starting to move into the Industrial Revolution. We didn't even have electricity, and steamships and trains were just coming into being. You go back 180 years ago, basically your fastest way to travel was how fast the wind would take you in your boat along the water, or how fast your horse would go. So communication was limited, transportation was limited, and knowledge was very limited. And then about 120, 130 years ago, we started going through the massive change. And all you got to do is look at what happened. And what was it? About 110 years ago, we didn't have cars. And then the telephone came into existence and our ability to communicate. And we've only had TV for about 70 years. I can remember when I was a young boy, we didn't have a TV and we didn't have a telephone in my home. And, here we are today. And now, once we've moved into the information age, the internet is rapidly, massively changing our lives. It's the ability to have information to us that we can find for ourselves, and we can find the truth for ourselves without being dependent upon these controllers of the information that they give us, i.e. the cabal, because they always controlled the information sources that we would use to develop what we believe and what we think is right and wrong, and etc. and stuff like that. So the early part of the shift and change has been on basically issues and things, physical things that change our lives. And the next part of it is we're moving into what I call the intuitive age. We are learning how to go within. We're learning how to truly discover who are we, what is the power of our thoughts, what is the power of our beliefs, what is the power of the energy of that is around us. And so we as a human race are now going through this huge shift and change of a new era, a new age. And we are going through an evolutionary process as we are growing and shifting and changing, and our world is shifting and changing. And this is exemplified by the fact that even where we are in our galaxy in the solar system, we have moved into what is called the photon band. It's this big, huge, wide band of photon light energy. And we were out of it for about maybe maybe around 6,000 years, 6,500 years, something like that. And then we move into it for about 2,500 years. We've just moved into it, which means our Earth and our galaxy is getting hit by this really, really small photon light energy. And this light energy, it wakes you up, is what it does. That light does that. Light shifts and changes everything for you. It's changing our DNA, it's changing our awareness, it's changing our ability to learn, and it's changing our consciousness. Well, with that change also means we have the ability to step into a new world of freedom. As human race, we have basically for thousands of years have lived into various forms of financial slavery. And it's been kings, monarchs, and dictators that have controlled the world for thousands of years. And we're now setting ourselves free from that type of massive control. But what these cabal controllers have done is that they've controlled money. Money's been their tool of keeping us in oppression or in slavery. And we're starting to move out of that. Now, when I talk about financial slavery, we forget we still live on a planet that over half of the population, over 4 billion people, live on less than $10 a day. That's called survival. The rest of us who have decent jobs were then slaves to our jobs. The majority of our time each day is spent making somebody else become very wealthy, working for them in the businesses and corporations, or working in the service sector to serve the people who do that. So we're dependent upon our jobs. We don't get to live in financial independence and freedom. And the purpose of the funds coming forward is to allow that to happen for us so we can move in a much more rapid fashion into this new world that we are moving into. So we have this new change, this new age, this new era, and we're in the photon band, and we're basically moving into forms of human evolvement. So then what is the position and the purpose of all this gold? And the gold of where it's coming from. It's basically coming from these families called the dragon families. Now, it's extremely important to understand that these dragon families are not all the same. They've been around for thousands of years. Most of them can actually trace their physical family genealogy back thousands of years. On one of my first trips to Hong Kong, I met a member of the dragon family. He says, "Dave, myself and my family are direct descendants of King David." Yes, the King David of the Bible. And yet the man's Chinese. And I thought, how did that happen? So we forget that, okay, there was King David. His son was King Solomon. And King Solomon had this massive, massive amount of gold in Solomon's temple. And Solomon was the man, as the Bible says, he had 1,000 wives. Now, he didn't go out and marry 1,000 wives just to be this really, nice guy. He basically, in that time and era, as a king, as a royal, he would marry the daughters of other kings in basically empires around the world. Why? That was one of the best ways that you keep world peace and you develop economic commerce. Because, see, you don't go to war with your wife's father. You trade economically with your wife's father. So Solomon had all these wives, and when his empire was coming to an end, he had one primary wife, and her name was Sheba, and she was from basically Asia. And today that family is Cambodian. And she was the one that brought the majority of the gold out of Solomon's temple back to Asia, which wasn't just the start, but it was a part of all the dragon family gold. See, the dragon family, there's 128 of these families. And they're not just Asian. They are the royal bloodlines out of Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and China. And they're very different. They're not all the same because they've been around for thousands of years. And so a lot of them are like very distant cousins. There are some in the rulership positions that are very benevolent. And there's some that are just plain flat out the funders of the cabal. They fund the cabal, and they're cabal based because they're still addicted to that whole thing of power and control over the masses of humanity. So when you hear the dragon families, you're going to have both. You're going to have black hats and you're going to have white hats amongst them. Well, let me go back to this gentleman that I had talked about that was from China. He told me, he says, "Dave, my family, we are the royal family of Cambodia, even though I live in China." Because Cambodia went through its period of basically the rise of communism, and it was taken over by Pol Pot. But prior to that, when we were still in what was called the royalty that ruled the country, if we were in that status today, my mother would be a princess in Cambodia and my uncle would be the king of Cambodia. And what he shared with me is this family, we are the true tribe of Judah that came out of underneath King David. Well, how can that be? In Cambodia, the tribe of Judah. Because the family lineage in the ancient biblical practice, it follows the female, not the male line. Because the female line is the line that gives birth to the children. And without the female, there are no babies, no lines to go on. So the lineage of a tribe or a family actually follows the female line. And so Sheba was part of the tribe of Judah. And that's where, now not all of it, but that's where a large part of it went with her. And they came out of that. So that's the history of this dragon family. But how did these dragon families come into existence? Well, let me take another step back a little bit further. And this is the history that you can now find out of the books that are out there, the massive books. And the best books are the ones by Dr. Sasha Lesson, who has a PhD out of UCLA in anthropology. And he is the one that has become one of the foremost scholars on the Anunnaki, basically the ancient alien race. And folks, we are at this position where we just cannot deny their existence anymore. This is the history that's been kept from us. This is what has been hidden from us. But with the new research that is coming out and these new the archaeological digs in these Sumerian tablets that are coming out of the areas in the Middle East and predominantly in Syria and in Iraq, it overwhelmingly shows the history of this Anunnaki race. They are basically an alien race that was here on Earth. And in the tablets themselves that are 5,000 to 8,000 years old, it describes who they are, why they came here, and etc. They came here about 400,000 years ago to mine the gold on Earth. They needed gold for their home planet. For about the first 100,000 years, they were the ones who mined it themselves. And then after about 100,000 years, and remember, they are a lineage of a race. Because their DNA is different than ours, they can live to be 300,000 and 400,000 Earth years old. That's the lineage that they can live to be. Because they have a different body composition of the energy that's in their bodies. And originally they were multidimensional beings, but they had that ability to live to be that long. So for them to be here for 100,000 years, that's not unusual. Well, after about that 100,000 years, basically it was their people mining the gold, kind of like slaves, and they started a rebellion. So basically they used their superiority in understanding genetics and developed these human race slaves, Homo sapiens, as slaves to mine the gold. And this went on for another couple 100,000 years that they were there mining the gold. Now, if you really want to get a good picture of the Anunnaki gold mines, you can read the information in the books by Michael Tellinger out of South Africa. Their technology was very advanced. And, they had, the spaceships that they could, fly up above the Earth in. And they had kind of an X-ray device. Because, see, gold, when it is in the ground, even when it's in its ore form, it puts off a very unique energy vibration. It puts off a vibration that they had kind of like an X-ray device that they could see and pick up. So they would be flying around over the Earth and say, oh, there's gold. Oh, over here is another gold. Oh, over there is another gold. And Michael Tellinger will tell you that the Anunnaki gold mines, they're still there in South Africa. They're never opened up into the public. But their mining technology was so far advanced beyond anything that we had. So they stayed here and they mined the gold. And it also says that after a couple 100,000 years, these humans started growing and developing and maturing and evolving. And it said that they had what was called a divine decree from basically what we would call God, from the divine source, saying the humans have evolved to the point where they are their own race and planet Earth is their planet. And your responsibility is to help them through this evolutionary process until we come through the new shift of the age, i.e. where we are now. And this was, 50 to 100,000 years ago. I don't know exactly as I remember and all that. But they had come to this point. They had basically gotten all the gold that they needed, and the majority of the Anunnaki left. But there were some that stayed behind. And in this divine decree, it says they were to create this royal bloodline race that would rule over the humans until the right appointed time. And that's the dragon families. And they are the ones that, yes, you hear about this royal blood. It is. It's a different bloodline that comes out of this. They're basically Anunnaki hybrids is what they are. They have a lot of the Anunnaki blood within them. And that's who the royalty are. Now, Sometimes we get pictures of royalty and we don't have a very good picture of them because they're dominant. They basically treat humans as slaves, etc., and stuff like that. The bad ones get the news. The good ones don't. There were a lot of very benevolent, royal bloodline rulers through the thousands of years over us as humanity. You have to remember that everything operates in duality. So where there's black hats, there's going to be white hats, and you're always going to have that. Their purpose was to rule over the humans until the right appointed time. And when the Anunnaki left, the gold that they had, a lot of it originally was the leftover gold that they had. Massive amounts of gold. We don't even have the technology today to mine the gold as they did. And this gold was kept in various caves and bunkers and storehouses throughout most of Asia and in the Pacific. But this gold isn't just in China. It's in China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. Those are the countries that I can remember where this family gold is located. It's all over throughout all Asia. But they have always kept it quiet because they knew that they were basically the guardians and the custodians of this gold to be released to humanity at the right appropriate time. And here we are, the right appropriate time. This is the time that we're going through the shift and change. This is the time that it's time for us to be freed from our financial slavery. So that's the background of where this gold had come from and all this gold that was left behind that they had brought out there. And it's a massive amount of gold. I've seen pictures from 4 different sources of the families that would just blow you away. I've had YouTube conversations with some of the families in another part of Asia, and they would show me pictures of gold and diamonds and riches in these caves that you and I could hardly comprehend. You want to get an idea? Watch the movie National Treasure, and when they discover all this gold, it's kind of almost what it's like, except it's not all in one place, but it's that much and more. It's massive, the amount that is out there. It's beyond our comprehension. Well, these families, what they have done, they have also very quietly developed bank accounts where the gold is used as collateral. And the primary place, and I can say this publicly, the primary bank is HSBC Bank in Hong Kong. Now, their bank accounts are what are called off-market accounts, offline accounts. You're never going to see them publicly talked about. They're not going to be a part of the bank's financial structure of, what is their worth as a bank. It's all private, but it's massive. There was a gentleman that I can refer to as Mr. T. I'm not at liberty to use his name. And let me say now, you have these dragon families. There's 128 of them. And they have this ranking, pecking order until they get up to the top. And when you get to the top, there are 9 senior elders that are there, that are that basically are the top rulers of the dragon families. And these 9 elders come from different clans within the family, and they represent the clan lines. And they rule over the family. They are the top of them. And then you get layered and structured down. And now I'm going to give you what is my opinion. You hear some other people talk about their relationships with the dragon families. Predominantly Neil Keenan, and the other is Zapp, who is also known as Jerzy Babkowski. They say that they are related, or they are in touch, or they are working with the dragon families. And yes, they are. But in my opinion, they're not at the very top. They're working at the lower levels. I should say some levels down, and I don't know how many. These lower levels still have lots and lots of money and lots of gold, but they're not the top authority of the decision makers. That's my opinion. Others may see it differently, but I'm sharing you how I see it. I've been able, through different sources, to be in touch with the very top, the council. And the top man there, they call him the Papa, the Grandpa. He's the one that's in touch. And this Mr. T that I have met with twice, I've been in meetings with him twice, that is the Papa's son. Let's just say he was a gentleman that is so connected. And he told me, he says, Dave, we recently were in a meeting with the CEO of HSBC Bank in Hong Kong, and he told us, this is, your family, you have more money in our bank than anybody in the world, and as far as we know, you have more money than absolutely by far than anybody in the world, and that's just what's in the bank accounts. These bank accounts had 30 to 40 zeros in them, folks. Wrap your heads around that, how much money that is, 30 to 40 zeros. And they're not all. That's not all of it. There's massive amounts of more. But you see, these families have seen themselves as guardians and custodians for the funds to be released, as I said, to humanity at the right appropriate time. It's not going to come out all at once. It gets released over a period of time. And this will go on for maybe a decade or two as these funds are being released. One of the reasons they've never been able to release or not trusted releasing it before, because they knew that we lived in a world where money was dominated and controlled by the cabal. And if they were to release trillions of dollars into the global economy, it would all end up filtering back to the cabal because of their ability to control the banking systems and get control of the money, and all it would do is make them more powerful. They had to wait until the world had developed enough that it would be safe to release these funds. It has always been their goal to reuse the funds to basically neutralize global economies and to neutralize our lives here on planet Earth between the haves and the have-nots. And right now we have a few countries that, basically the G7 countries that are the wealthy countries. And of the almost 200 countries on this planet, most of them, they live in poverty, abject poverty, even as a country, let alone their people. And they've always wanted to neutralize that. Because when you neutralize global economies and you improve living conditions, what do? You basically eliminate wars. You bring the planet to a place of peace. Their first attempt to do this was the original Bretton Woods Agreement of 1943. Out of the Bretton Woods Agreement is where they formed the United Nations, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, and the World Bank. These institutions were to be used as vehicles to logistically move the money around the world. They came in, they were established, and within a very short period of time, the cabal got the idea of what was happening. And then so what they did, they stepped in and took control of those organizations so they couldn't be used for the Dragon family's purposes. The second attempt to release massive amounts of money, and at this time it was about $6 trillion in 1963 and $63. Imagine that today, that would be more than the total U.S. annual gross domestic product, because in today's dollars, that would probably be, 20 to 25, $30 trillion in today's dollars. President Sukarno of Indonesia was a member of the Dragon families. He had reached an agreement with President Kennedy, and it was called the Green Hilton Memorial Agreement. Now, I have the copy of that agreement where you can see it was signed by Sukarno, it was signed by Kennedy, and it was signed by William Volcker, the president at UBS Bank of Switzerland, where the money was being moved through. In 1963, Kennedy had gone public that he wanted to get rid of the Federal Reserve. He started issuing what was called these U.S. silver certificate currencies to basically phase out the Federal Reserve currencies that we had. He wanted to get rid of the Federal Reserve. The problem was, the Federal Reserve is the cabal's logistic organization mechanism they use to manipulate money movement around the world. They manipulate the coming and going and the flow of money around the world using the central banking system, and predominantly the Federal Reserve is the largest and controlling one, the biggest controlling one of them all. Kennedy knew that. He knew it was a corrupt organization, and he wanted to get rid of it. The second thing is, he also knew that the CIA was where the Black Ops operation that was going on, that was basically the cabal's operation system. He was going to totally restructure the CIA, and he was going to get rid of the Federal Reserve, and he had been public about that. If the Green Hilton Memorial Agreement had been implemented and carried out, that would have happened. Federal Reserve would have been history, and the CIA would have been totally restructured, and its black op operations would have been gone. Kennedy signed the Green Hilton Memorial Agreement, and 9 days later he was dead. There's different stories about what was the real reason why Kennedy was assassinated. In my opinion, this was it. Because you've got cabal controllers that are not going to allow their vehicles to be done. Because if the Federal Reserve goes away, they've lost most of their power. That was the second attempt to use this gold to move it. Well, after that, these Dragon family members realized something. First of all, they're very patient. Remember, this had been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. They don't have to jump into something overnight and do it very quickly. They realized they couldn't trust the countries because they were corrupt at the top. They realized they couldn't trust the banking system because it was corrupt at the top. So they recognized to be able to move this money, they were going to have to develop to the point that there would be a safe system and a safe way to move it to be able to get it out all around the world. So here's what they did, and this is what they're doing now. They're basically flipping it. Instead of starting from the top and coming down, they're going to start at the bottom with scores of thousands of everyday individuals like you and me, and that's predominantly for what is called the program funding. And they're going to move millions and millions of dollars through scores of thousands of individuals all around the world. You see, how does the cabal stop 10,000 people from spending $5 to $10 million each for humanitarian aid programs? They can't. You can't stop that many people. So they realized they flipped it. And that's why this money is coming forward for the project funding. And in the money coming forward from the project funding, they had to set up an organization and allow it to develop quietly where there would be scores of thousands of people that they could use. And then also they had to be able to make sure that the banking system had developed to the point where they could safely move the money and it wouldn't get stolen from them on the money wires. And it's taken this long for them to get there, but they're finally there. They are finally there. That's the funding. That's the project funding side. The currency exchange comes from a different funding source. And at the very end of it, yes, they are a part of it, but they aren't the ones managing and controlling the currency exchange. But yet they did set up the system, or I should say allowed the system to be set up so that a less number of people, limited number of people like you and me would be able to exchange these currencies to also have massive amounts of money to move to stimulate global economies. That's where the money's coming from. Its foundation are these ancient families who have this untold massive amount of gold. That is where it started predominantly from the Anunnaki gold mining days, and when they were done, they left it behind for them. And you can find in the ancient Sumerian tablets, it says that it was their responsibility was to develop these royal bloodline races who would basically rule over the human race until the right appointed time, and then also would be vehicles to release this massive amount of money at the right appointed time. That's how it talks about that in the Sumerian tablets, and this is the right appointed time. This is the shift of the age. This is when we get to start moving out of literally hundreds, if not thousands of years of being in various forms of financial slavery and becoming free within ourselves. That's the purpose of the money. And it also takes on a secondary role, because see, it's one thing to get all the money, but then what are you going to do with it, and what's the real purpose of it? After we receive the money, the real purpose is so that you and I can be financially free, where we're not slaves to a job. We have the freedom to live on the money that we have, and so that we can be financially free, and we can then spend the time and the work that is necessary to be the pioneers, to be the trailblazers for this shift in the evolvement of human consciousness. That's our real purpose and goal, because it takes a lot of time and a lot of work to do that. If you're working a job 40 to 50 hours a week and taking care of a family, you don't have time to do that kind of work and research. It takes a lot to do that. But if you're financially free, you do have the time to do that work and research. And that's the real intention of the money. The second purpose is to spend it so that it stimulates a global economy all around the world. That's what's coming. That's where the money is coming from, why it is coming, and how you got here, I don't know. That's your business. I have no idea. All I know is that when I met with Mr. T, now remember, this is the man, he's the son of the senior elder of the 9-member senior council of elders. I'm sitting there right next to him, and his phone rings. He picks it up, talks for about 30 seconds to a minute, sets it down, and it's sitting there right on the table right beside me, and I can just look down on it, and I can see these names that were on his frequent caller list. And I saw this one name, and I says, I recognize that name. It says, is that the man that's the M1? The man who's basically, the chief financial officer for the family and all their funds? And he said, yes, except he's done. He just finished his job. He finished his role. He has moved on. But yes, he's the one that I used to call very frequently because he is what was called the M1, the money person for the family. Right underneath that was another name. And I thought, is that guy who I think it is? And he says, yes. That's Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. I have the ability to call him anytime that I want to. And we are at a point now that I can go ahead and I can say this publicly because we're so close to everything being released. Putin is a family member. He's a part of the Dragon family clans. Now, he's a low-level member. He was not a high-ranking member. But here's what the elders knew. They said, we have the money. We are the bankers. We're the ones with the money. But we don't have the guns. We don't have the political and military support that we need to be able to move this money. And political and military power can stop us from moving this money. They realized that they needed to have the cooperation of President Trump of the United States, President Putin of Russia, and President Xi of China. They all three had to be on board before they could release all of these funds. Because you see, even those three world leaders understand they're not the real leaders of the world. The cabal are the ones really that run and control things in what we call the shadow world, behind the scenes that the public never sees. And they're controlled to a certain degree by that cabal. So the family knew that until they had all three of those on board, they were never going to be able to move this money. And I remember talking to Mr. T, and I said, Putin is extremely wealthy. I said, where did he get all that money? And he turned and he looked at me. He says, Dave, he's a family member. And we knew he was on his way to being the president of Russia. And when he got into that position, being the president of Russia, the family gave him $500 billion to do whatever he needed to do to carry on the mission. That's where he got his money. Flat out. That's how it was told to me by Mr. T. Later in the conversation, Mr. T also said something else. He said, we've been watching you. We've had, at least people in our organization, we've been watching you and listening to your program for a year and a half, 2 years now. And you're fitting what we've been looking for. We've been looking for somebody that gets it, understands it, that we can trust, and that can bring us in about 8,000 to 10,000 people that we can use initially to spread humanitarian aid money around the world. And he said, Dave, you did it. You're the one that we were looking for, that you have a very large organization of people who are deeply committed to you. You share the story, you share the history, you get it, you understand it. And you're the ones, when it comes time to do humanitarian aid funding, we will start with you and your organization, the Sedona Connection. That's exactly how it was explained to me by Mr. T. So folks, that's why we're here. And that's what the real purpose of this. It's not about you and me getting rich and go off to do our own little thing to protect ourselves from this evil world. It's about you and I being part of a group, part of a team that are to be the pioneers to lead us into a new world, into a new age, into a new era. That's why this is taking place. It's an exciting journey, and it's been an exciting journey for me. In my latest updates that I've had upon the funds being released, I was getting, again, divergent reports of stuff that was taking place in Reno. So I called up one of my friends. We don't talk all that much because we know to stay quiet unless it's necessary. And I said, what's really going on there? And he said, Dave, here's the bottom line. Yes, money has been moved, but the money that was moved was not our funds that was moved. The money that was moved in the bank in Reno that Hong Kong released was the money to set up for the new TRNs to replace the FRNs. That's what that money was for. When it comes time to our money, it's now evolved to the point, and I'm telling it to you again as the individual told me because he has the contacts. We've come to the point that the decision maker is President Trump. When he says go, it will go. It's important for us to understand this is not about you and me. This is an international, global, changing event. This is going to change the global economy. It's going to change the global political power structure. And most of all, it's about what I call neutering the power of the cabal, the black hats. And he's the one that's in touch with the intelligence to know when it's time to go. And that's where we are. Everything we hear is that it's very, very close. But the exact dates, they aren't coming out. And the people who know, they aren't talking to anybody unless you are in a need to know. And I'm not in a need to know. And all of my contacts, they're not in a need to know, even though they are the largest brokers in the world. The funders, those giving out the funds, aren't even necessarily in a need to know, because right now it's moved into what you call the political arena, into what you call, which is the word I'm looking for? It's basically a counter-espionage, type of political situation. And so those are the people that are in the need to know, and those are the people that are going to tell when it's time to go. And everything we're saying and hearing is it's very close. Can I give you dates? No, I can't. I don't have those dates. So I think I've got everything that I wanted to share tonight. Blanca, how about you coming back on and joining us? And if you think that there's anything that I might have missed, you've heard this story a few times in the workshops, or anything else that you would like to add to us. So Blanca, share with us your thoughts tonight.
Hello?
There you are. Okay.
Okay. I was trying to find my mute button here, and well, it's always an interesting story to listen to, that's for sure. And it almost makes me wonder, well, how many people have heard about the story of the Anunnaki, and what sort of thoughts go into their mind about that? And so how did, as you were doing your research and learning about this, and you've always wanted to follow the money, how did you make that link between the Anunnaki and that story and information, and the fact that they're either linked to the families and the gold? What gave you that insight? I know there's a story behind that.
Yeah, there is, because you're not going to be able to go online and do research about the Anunnaki and see them connected to the dragon families. I don't know of any place that's out there on the internet. And it's extremely important to understand is that when you do research on the Anunnaki on the internet, predominantly on YouTube, the vast majority of them present them as the black hats. They are the bad guys, the evil guys, the bad people of the empire, whatever you want to say. It's really important to understand that they're a vast race, a very large and divergent race. And so there's black hats and there's white hats. And the white hats don't make the news. But there are white hat Anunnaki that are out there that are very benevolent and here to help us. And I've told about that story through the relationship of basically that, comes through A.R. Borden and his relationship with what was called the Cordium, which was the benevolent Anunnaki race that he worked with for close to 30 years. It was I had been just going through a period where I was watching some videos and reading some books about the Anunnaki. And I saw that somebody had stated that out of the Sumerian tablets, that the Anunnaki basically had this massive amount of gold, and it said that they had this divine decree from what we would call God, that their job was to basically create this royal bloodline race to rule over the humans and to be the caretakers of this gold. And I thought, huh. And that's when, in one of my next times that I was talking with some of the people of the dragon families, I asked them, I says, are the dragon families Anunnaki descendants? And they said, yeah, we are. All of the families, we're all descendants of the Anunnaki, and we got our rule and authority from the Anunnaki. We just don't talk about it. But yes, that is who we are. We're Anunnaki descendants. We are royal bloodlines. That the royal blood that comes out from them, and they're the ones that gave us the power and the authority and the control of the rulership and the gold. And it's now time to start releasing it and letting it go and moving it on to humanity. So it was kind of putting a couple things together, is where I had, I had gotten that. So, and it's not something you're going to find out there on the internet, but I have confirmed it with different sources within the family, and they all say, yes, that's accurate. Yeah, because the gold, the majority of the gold that they have was the leftover Anunnaki gold when they were done. So
that's pretty good. Well, too, and I remember you actually had the opportunity to kind of connect some dots when you talked with the Levins. That's another part of the story.
Yeah.
You met a lot of people who were very interesting in your journey with this.
Well, it's I know it's kind of like, as I said, it's kind of like, I've been down these rabbit holes that most people can just dream about, and I said, why is this happening to me?
Yes.
And I can remember I went through a period of time where I said, is this really happening to me? Am I really, why me? And then all of a sudden I had one of those epiphany moments, and I said, wait a minute. Somebody's going to do this, and somebody is supposed to do it. And I guess it's me. And I accepted it. And so since then, it just totally changed my whole confidence, and it kind of took me to a whole new level. And I've come to understand this is my divine assignment. See, when you're on your divine assignment and you live with that, the stuff finds you. It just finds you what you're supposed to do. And my job, my divine assignment, is to bring all these people together to help shift and change this world through the release of this money. And that's what I'm doing. And I love what I do.
Right. Another big key was also when you met Michael Lee Hill, and he's going to be at your workshop in Sedona. But that was another big key. So it's really interesting how, as you continued on the journey, some very key people came into your life, and you had something to add to their divine assignment, and they added to yours. So people who have been following you for some time have seen how this developed. And you've always, that's another reason why I believe you give these updates, is because as you're going in this journey, you're learning more and adding to your understanding of what's going on. But I remember when, and you even had Michael Lee Hill on your show a couple of times, that was a significant connection there too.
Well, it's interesting, the history of that, because I made the connection in the history about the Anunnaki through Dr. Lesson's books. And it was about 3 years ago, I was in Seattle in a workshop, and I had a gentleman that was there from Maui. He said, Dave, you need to come and visit us in Maui. And I thought, wow, I'd never been there before. I said, yeah, I can do that. So I went there, and we got into the conversation, and I was telling about how I was reading, Dr. Lesson's books, and I wanted to meet him and ask him a lot of questions. And I thought he lived in Southern California. And they said, Sasha, no. He just lives over there on the other side of the island. He's been there for 37 years. So, and that was another one of those divine moments, because I ended up going to Maui and I was invited there, and that's where I was able to meet, Dr. Lesson. And the first time I met with him, I spent close to 8 hours with him and his wife in their home, and we just talked about it. And we began to realize that he and I were kind of filling the pictures of each other's story. He was the expert on the Anunnaki, but didn't know that much about the dragon families. And I had the dragon family history, but not a lot about the Anunnaki. And we filled in those gaps. And when I was there, I asked him, so are there still some of the Anunnaki around? Are they still here today? And he says, oh, yeah. And I says, are there people that are still communicating with him? I said, oh, yeah. Yeah, there's this one guy specifically. His name is Michael Lee Hill. And so he introduced me to Michael, and that's where Michael and I became acquainted. And if you know the story about Michael, see, Michael is what is called a Nephilim. It's an Anunnaki human hybrid. It has been backed up by his blood test and his DNA. Now, Michael's just a down-to-earth, everyday normal guy, but he's also beginning to discover his divine assignment. And it's unfolding for him. And there's been exciting stuff. Michael didn't know hardly anything about the dragon families. 10 years ago, he didn't even know what an Anunnaki was. And he later found out, I
remember that.
And so he's going through his own transition, through his own life. And we've developed a good friendship, and he'll be with us next month. And yeah, so his story is a fascinating story. His story predominantly comes out of because of the UFOs. He lived in Cleveland. He lived about Cleveland suburbs. He lived about 4 blocks off the shore of Lake Erie. He would go down there at night, and the UFOs would show up. And it got to the point they were showing up every time he went down there, and he brought out his camera. And he's been told he probably has the largest UFO library of almost anybody in the world. And he realized after a few months, they're showing up for me. I come down here, they know where I am. They're showing up for me to communicate to me. And they were. Now, he didn't necessarily have direct face-to-face communication with them, but they would just show up. It was one of those confidence builders, because they allow you to develop step-by-step through confidence building. And out of that, he ended up, being on the History Channel. And it was through that he developed the relationship with A.R. Borden. Borden was the man that worked with the benevolent Anunnaki, and Borden had worked with them for almost 30 years. Michael and Borden became very close personal friends, and Borden was basically tutoring Michael for the last 5 years of his life until he transitioned about 5 years ago. So, yep. So that's Michael's history. And he's got some new stuff
right.
he's developed with his it's 432 Hz sound disc that are research that are being done by various scientists of what this disc is doing to water, and they're just stunned. They've never seen anything like it. He may be breaking through on something of a whole new form that's going to develop it to free energy in a new way with what he's done with these discs. It's one of those divine assignments, again, that's finding him is what it is. So, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, all very interesting, so that people know that you get your information from some very interesting people who are involved in some major projects, and also part of this shift for humanity.
Yeah. So, okay. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Are we ready to go to the callers?
One more thing.
Sure.
I like the movie National Treasure, too. It was a fun movie. Especially, I don't want to be a spoiler here, so if people haven't seen it, you might want to check it out. It's a fun movie. It's got a nice pace to it. And but it was kind of very exciting at the end when they got very close to the treasure. I don't want to give more away, but if people want to maybe get inspired for what's in store for them, they might want to enjoy watching
It's a great movie to watch. In fact, in one of Gary Renard's books, in the discussion he has with Artin and Persa, they use that movie as an example of how you can believe for what is out there and bring it forward. So, yeah. And they mention, watch the character in the movie National Treasure. That's what they say. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
Well, we do have a few people in the queue.
Okay, and you've already
taken... I want to give out the call-out number.
You've already... Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, folks. Yes. Yeah, the call-in number, if you would like to call in, if you have some questions or want to make some comments, the number is 515-605-9356. Again, that's 515-605-9356. Touch 1 on your touch tone phone. That gives us a little flag saying, yeah, you'd like to come on the air, and Blanca will come and kind of screen you, and we'll get ready for us. So, but we're ready to go on the first gentleman then, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Okay, and then I'll let you go ahead and take care of the others. So, the first gentleman we have, his name is Kirk from area code 650. Kirk, you're on the air. What can we help you with tonight?
How are you doing, Dave?
Good.
Good. Well, thank you for that excellent recap. I mean, you've covered some of that material in the seminars, and you cover more. So hopefully people will come and hear, to your newest ones to keep getting more. If you can, I wanted to follow up on your call from 2 weeks ago, where you were seeing progress in your own personal groups and things. And particularly you were saying some new paperwork was coming to kind of at least set the groundwork. Can you say anything further about whether that happened? And
No,
in terms of setting it up.
I got sidetracked, and the original paperwork is the affidavit agreement for those that are in the round one that I need to have all you folks sign. But it's not urgent. There isn't an urgent time frame on it. And I got sidetracked, and then I forgot to take it with me when I was gone, for 6 days to Baltimore. So I'll probably have it out tomorrow or the day after. That's only for those that are in round one. Everybody else that is in round two, folks, you don't have to worry about any paperwork until it's time to proceed. We will give you the instructions and send you out all the paperwork when it comes time to start proceeding, because I'm not in the business of starting to collect, paperwork from 8 to 10,000 people until I have the staff ready to do that, okay? So I don't have time to process all that stuff. So the affidavit, that will be coming out shortly. For those that only in the dong exchange of round one, the others that will follow up after that. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
All right. Well, thanks for that clarification. This week we went through a significant event with the lunar eclipse. I know I felt the energy coming from that in very heavy. I mean, it was very strong prior. But being there and actually kind of meditating at the moment, it does feel new after this. And it did feel like it really cleared things. But in particular, something came up, which is it also brought things up that maybe you hadn't dealt with recently. You kind of maybe put on the side or not, just maybe needed to go and acknowledge that either you hadn't done something or you hadn't done something right, but that you needed to be honest with whoever that was and whatever that situation was, to say either I'm sorry, I'm going to handle it, or, here's where things are. I'm curious what your reaction to feelings from that, and share any thoughts you have about the effect you saw or know of from the eclipse.
I can't say anything specific other than the fact that I could just tell that the energy was heavy. You could feel it. I could feel it in my body. I noticed my digestive system seemed to be a little bit different. It was like, this is weird. Stuff was, built. I mean, and I'm very conscientious about my eating, and I always take stuff to make sure that my colon is cleansing and the stuff is moving through me, and I'm always, conscientious about what I'm eating. But it was just, I noticed that there was a heavy feeling that was there. That's all it was for me. Other than that, I can't say anything specific. Different people see it differently, but that's for me. That's all it was.
Well, that's very true. And again, I just thought it was very, being sensitive myself to that, and at least focus on it, and notice it. It really was heavy coming up to it. And I'm glad that we're now there. And it did seem to create an opening for a lot, at least in my world, it created an opening for a lot of new things that I've been putting some energy into, but now they feel accelerated or supported. That just was my experience, but it was an interesting transition point that I think most of us experienced in one way or the other.
Sure, yeah.
That being said, I really hope I can come out to Sedona. I'm going to try.
Good.
But I will keep in touch with you. So, best wishes.
Okay.
And thanks again.
Great. Thanks, Kirk. All right. Okay. Let's see. We'll go on to the next person that's called in. His name is Max from area code 617. Max, you're on the air. What can we help you with tonight?
Hi, Dave. I beg your indulgence a little bit because I do need to generate a little context for the question that I'm going to ask you, but I think it'll be worth it, and I'll do it quick. I think one really good example that will make my point is that if I had to go to court and I chose to defend myself in ignorance and did not bring a lawyer, I could get myself into some pretty hot water pretty quick and wind up in jail. Would you agree?
Possibly, but not always.
Right, possibly, but not always. And so the rule of law is entrenched in structure in the system going back thousands and thousands of years that have the cabal that you assert needs to be neutralized in order to really enable these funds to make the kind of impact that a lot of us would like to see made. You've got Washington, D.C., you've got London, and you've got the Vatican that are basically what I would call the control centers to make sure that the cabal has a way of maintaining their enshacklement of the globe. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Okay, so having said that, when these funds are released to however many of us that are able to use them, what will prevent the existing system from still, which is to say the rule of law, from still being able to maintain the type of control that could prevent a lot of the funds from doing things to liberate major parts of the planet?
Two things. Number one, they're running out of money. They don't have the money that they used to have. Their ability to dominate and control has been their ability because they dominated the money supply in the world. And I should say what is called the known money supply in the world. The family has always had far, far more money, but the family does not involve themselves in political or issues of different countries. They stay neutral when it comes to country politics. They don't involve in that. They are here for the development and what is called, the evolvement of the human race, not on a political system. Because politics come and go. They always come and go. World leaders come and go. Humanity is always around. The cabal's losing their money. That's the first thing. They don't have the money that they used to have. Secondly, their ability to control is being diminished as well. They've always had two, what I call paradigms where they've been able to control. Number one, they controlled the paradigm of information. Before the advent of the internet, they basically controlled what was called the education industry, the media industry, and the entertainment industry. Those three industries were the ones that would form our world views and what we were, and they controlled them. They don't have control of that anymore. The internet has totally taken away their ability to control what we learn. We can learn the truth for ourselves. We're learning about a shadow world is out there. We're learning who they are. And the reality is, and this really comes if you study A.R. Borden's materials, when we as a collective can come together with a collective thought and consciousness, it's the power of the memes of human consciousness that shift and change everything around us and creates the world that we experience. As we're learning the truth of the cabal, we're neutering their ability to have power and control over information. And because the cabal has always said their greatest fear is humanity waking up to the truth. And we're doing that. That is their greatest fear is coming to pass. The second paradigm was controlling the world's money supply. They're losing control of that because we're waking up. Number two, the other way that we're going to be able to take away their power and money is the new cryptocurrency system. You see, right now we live in a world that every financial transaction, the bank is always the middleman in the transaction. If you go to a place and you use a debit card, you don't get let's say someone comes to my workshops and you pay me with a debit card. The card transaction goes through the bank and comes to me from the bank. If you write a check, the check goes to the bank and comes to me through the bank. If you use cash currency, you had to go to the bank to get the cash currency that you give to me. So the bank was always in the middle of every single financial transaction, and therefore they controlled the ebb and flow of money. In the new cryptocurrency system, there's no bank in the middle. If I wanted to give you $10,000 of Bitcoin, I transfer it from you to me, and there's no bank in the picture at all. The banks are hating the cryptocurrency system because they know it's taking away their power and their control. Now, when these funds come forward, there's just enough that's coming forward from myself and the people that we know that will be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And if we place that into a bank that is not a part of that central banking system, and we allow our discretionary money to sit in cryptocurrencies, we've taken literally hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars out of their control. That's the second thing. So they're losing their power and control of information and their power and control of the world's money supply. That's the predominantly thing of why it's shifting and changing. And secondly, when these funds are released, there's going to be trillions and trillions of dollars that is going to neutralize the global economies. And that takes away their power and control as well. Now, it's not a system that's going to happen overnight, but it's a system that's going to phase in probably over a decade or two. That's how I see it.
To augment one point you made, and you can expound on it, and then I'll kind of get off. The current financial system, the current banking system, is basically numbers in a computer, and it's not asset-backed. So when you talk about that the cabal are losing their supply of money, it seems to me that the bulk of their wealth rests on controlling the appearance of money through the computerized system of the banks, and it's not asset-backed, whereas we're moving into an asset-backed system, and which would also be the basis, I'm assuming, for the cryptocurrency. So that just kind of supports the point that you made about that.
Yes, and that would be a third factor, is because, I just said that they just released a large ton of money to back up the TRNs, the new money system. See, at the end of the day, 95 to 98% of all our money is digital. And the digital money doesn't know if it's FRNs or TINs, has no idea. When you start phasing out the FRN money system and replacing it with asset backs, the cabal don't have the assets to back up their FRN currencies. Their fiat-based currency. And it's going to eliminate the fiat system. So you start going back to asset-backed currencies, you eliminate the fiat system as where their money is, and their money fades out and fades away.
Yeah.
And they don't have the assets, and the families do. The families have the assets to back up all the currencies in the world. See? So it's a shift
The other thing that
where the power is.
Go ahead.
That's it. That's all I got, but go ahead.
In 1517, Martin Luther translated the Bible from Latin into German, and that enabled people to understand, quote unquote, God's will for them and not have to take it from the ecclesiastics and the people that were in leadership positions that told them this.
Yep. Yeah. See, when you start empowering people to learn for themselves, you shift and change the consciousness of humanity. And in the world we live in now, our greatest gift has been the internet. That's what it's done that.
Yes.
And we're going to now start moving into what I call the intuitive age, to start learning how to go in and make the inner shifts within. I use this term that we will learn how to move from what is called a Newtonian-based world of Newtonian physics, and to become what is called holonomic quantum-based people, and understanding we can live from a quantum perspective where everything is just energy. And when you do that, your potential is unlimited. The only limitations is based on your thought system and the old programming. So you have to unprogram the old unconscious thought systems and replace it with a new thought system, and that takes a couple decades to do that work. It doesn't happen overnight, because you're talking about a programming that's at the unconscious level that carries with us from lifetime to lifetime, and it's been with us for thousands and thousands of years. And you don't unprogram thousands and thousands of years of unconscious programming that's still in our DNA overnight. It takes consistent, deliberate, and diligent work to do that. And that takes decades. But that's what we're moving into.
Well, the future is pure and untarnished, and with the combined power of the information and the systems that are going to be liberated, it bodes very, very well for a happy future over time.
Okay, anything else, Max?
Thank you.
Share with tonight?
No.
Okay, alrighty, thanks.
Good.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Bye.
Well, we only had a couple people call in for questions tonight, Blanca.
I know we had several in the queue. When I checked with them, a few didn't answer, and one person said it was accidental that he was in the queue. So we finished quickly with them. And I don't know if someone wants to try to jump in. Of course, they can press 1. But I think you covered a lot of very good information. I think the questions, as usual, Kirk and Max bring some thoughtful questions and discussion. to the fore. I like you ending on thoughts about the future because you started with a shift and change, and you talked about the cycles, and yes, the money, of course, is going to facilitate a lot of possibilities for us. Many, and I've talked to many of the folks who follow you, they've got dreams about how they're going to help their families and their friends and their projects. But additionally, and maybe even more importantly, is the inner work. And so I'm glad you ended on that note. And I know you've had some shows where the discussion was about the inner work, but we do not want to carry the old programs with us into the new, do we?
Nope. Not at all. So, let me mention, I just had an email come in, and let me just address this. There was a lady that mentioned that, she has friends from Ethiopia and Yemen, and they claim Queen Sheba is from their countries, and they are from the tribe of Judah. Yes, that is possible, because, see, Sheba was her name, okay, and that's as I understand it. Now, there might be a little different pronunciation of it, but she had children. And not all of those children went with her back to Asia. Some of them went to Ethiopia. And yes, there is supposedly is some of that King Solomon gold that is there. Because see, she didn't take all the gold with her to Asia. Some of it got split up, and some of it was left behind. They took the massive amount of it, and they left some of it behind, so they would always leave a trail, not thinking that people would go out looking for it somewhere else. And then that's where you get into the history of, I'm going Blanca, the European group that, went in there during the Crusades and were looking for the gold and stuff like that. Yeah, and they had they took some of it as well. But that was, the old stuff. But so she was the primary one, but not everybody went to Asia with her. So there was both that potential that was there. So. Okay, so we just had a new person come in, and did you know what I'll do, Blanca? I'll just go right directly to them, okay? Or maybe you're already there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go right directly to the 949 area code. Oh, you had no answer on that
one. 9? Yeah, I wait, but there's another one who jumped on, so maybe
we'll just go there.
Have a question.
Okay. We'll go right into this. Is the individual from area code 773. You're here on the air with Dave. What can you help me with tonight?
Yeah, my name's Cliff, Dave. I've been at your presentations before. I was just wondering about the relationship with our government and President Trump. Are they so fearful? Are they so involved with the cabal that they want to just get him out of the way by whatever means they can?
Well, you have to understand the cabal really runs and controls the government, and Trump's the first guy they haven't been able to control in close to 100 years. You see, they have been able to use their power of money to always control who became the president. You can't get elected to be in president without raising scores of millions of dollars. And so they control who can raise the money. And then secondly, you remember what we end up doing is that we end up electing a president from a candidate that the two parties brought forward. We're electing either a Republican candidate or a Democratic candidate, and the independents, they rarely have anything to say about it. And so only about 15% of the voters in the country select who is the Republican nominee, and another 15% of the country elect who is the Democrat nominee. So if you want to control who gets to be president, you control who can raise the money and get the party's nomination. And they have always done that for hundreds of years. And Trump is the first one they couldn't do that with because he didn't need their money. Remember, he financed his own campaign. And so he is on the mission knowing that basically his job is to neuter or get rid of the deep state, i.e. the cabal. And that's his predominant mission. Believe what you want about Trump. Yeah, he does stupid things. Yes, he has an ego. Yes, he had a problem with this this porn star, and he's got other stuff that goes on. Yes, all that stuff is there. But when you dig down below all of that, he's the right person at the right time to bring forward and all the help to bring forward these funds. Now, let me tell you what my sources have told me. He is aware of it. He knows of it. He's involved in it. And this comes from my sources that have contacts that are directly in his office. And if Hillary would have got elected, there would be no currency exchange. Zero. She would not have allowed it to come forward. We were history. This whole thing was history if she would have been elected. Because she knew and she understood that if this money comes forward, it changes the world. And that's how it's been explained from sources inside Trump's office. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, well, yeah, it does. And before you mentioned that President Trump, during his campaign, had landed in Reno, and he was there for 8 hours. And you figure campaign stop is an hour and maybe hour and a half. So why was he there for such a long time? Were they
It didn't happen just once.
What was going on?
It happened twice. When you're out campaigning, remember, in the last month to month and a half before the election, he was making 2 to 3 campaign stops every single day all around the country. But in that period of time, he had twice that he went to Reno, Nevada, did a campaign rally, and his plane was on the ground for 8 to 10 hours. You don't go to Reno, Nevada to win a state that only has 3 electoral college votes. You'd go to Vegas, where 80% of the state's population is. So why was he in Reno all day twice when all the rest of the time he's making these multiple stops every day? Is because that's where the currency exchange and the people heading it all up, that's where they were. And that's where we were told that he went there to meet with his folks about his dinar. So, yeah, his dinar being funded. That's how it was explained to us.
Well,
from the people that were there on the ground.
okay. Thanks for all your information. Thanks for everything that you're doing for us. And hopefully I can get to Sedona. My brother and I want to get out there as soon as we are able to sign up for it.
We'd love to have you.
So we'll see you then, hopefully.
And for all you folks freezing in the Northeast, it's all blue skies and about 60 degrees, 65 degrees today and tomorrow in Sedona. I won't say any more about that.
Yeah, and it's 22 degrees in Chicago right now.
I know, it got down to 9 when I was in Baltimore. Yeah, so.
You have a good evening.
Thank you, Cliff. Okay, let me check an email that just came in. The email that just came in says, do we need a cryptocurrency account to set up and receive these funds? No, you don't. No. It would be, I'm working with the Meta One Coin folks, and we're encouraging the people that are there to, take their money and put it into the Meta One for those who have already purchased that coin, because that's a part of what we're doing here as well. But no, it's not a requirement. So, okay. Let's see. Blanca, I think we have another person that just called in, area code 262. So I'll take this one. I'm going to area code 262. You're on the air here with Dave. What can we help you with tonight?
Yeah, hi, Dave. Say, you were talking about the Dragon families were listening to your show, and they said they liked what you did, you understood it, and you were passing this on to your people, and they're looking for a certain amount of people to carry this on, right?
Yes.
So that brings the question to me, how long are you going to be leaving this round 2 open for people? Because what I'm thinking is once people start actually collecting, say, on round 1, this will open up the gates where people are going to start believing this more, and they're going to be jumping on board of this.
I don't have an exact
because
answer.
I know for myself.
I know. Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't have an exact answer on that, but as of now, this is what I'm looking at doing. When round 1 funding starts, I will basically use that as a demarcation date of those that were here pre-round 1 and those that come in after. And for those that come in after, you're going to be lucky if you're going to get anything. That's all I can say. Those for round 2 are those that are already on my list, and they were here before the funding came forward. Because yes, once the money starts coming forward, people start jumping on the bandwagon. And all I'm saying is, I can, If I have to draw a line, that's where I draw the line. Now, that will be dependent upon how much money is available and how many people are there. But for those that, because see, when you sign up on my list, I use Constant Contact, and it tells me the date of when people came on to Constant Contact. And I will make a complete demarcation of a file before and after that date. And that's how I'll use that to separate those groups. I won't stop people from signing up, but I will not guarantee that they're going to get anything if they signed up after it was announced that the funds were available. So, okay. Did that help?
And I know even for myself, I recommended to 4 other people to sign up for this, and that was a number of years ago already, and they've dropped off of this, long ago already.
Yeah.
They don't. I'm sure they don't listen. They don't even probably open up their emails.
Yeah.
So, is this the type of person that really even deserves to get this money? Is it the right type of person?
Well, let me say elsewhere. I have around 17,000 names on my newsletter list, but the reality is only about 8,000 to 9,000 of those are active, which means they're actually opening up the emails, the newsletters when I send them out. And what I will do is when it comes time to start processing, I'm going to send out an email to everybody on my newsletter list. And I'll do that maybe a couple times. And I will be asking you to respond back to me. And the very first step that you have to do is that you have to basically fill out the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement form, with me. Now, your NDA is with me. It's not with anybody else. But I use this as a security measure. And if I don't get an NDA form back from you, you're not getting anything. That's the bottom line. And so I will do that a number of times, and I will maybe give them 3 to 4 weeks to send in the NDA form. And if I don't get an NDA form with you, I will send out another newsletter saying this is the cutoff date, and if you're done, if you don't respond, you're out. I'm not going to allow, 7,000 to 8,000 people who have basically been inactive for a couple years to all of a sudden jump on the bandwagon again. No, you have to be here and be participating. You have to at some point in time. So if the money starts going public and I send this stuff out, they're going to have to respond to their newsletters. They're going to have to reactivate their account, in so many words. And if they don't activate their account, I've got too many people to deal with as it is. And if they don't want to actively participate, that's their choice. And because they're still of the mindset, I'm here for the money and that's it. Because if they're not listening to programs, tuning in, taking place with what's going on, coming to workshops, there's no interest. They only want, tell me about the money, what's going to happen, and what am I going to get? And I thought, goodbye. You got to be active here if you want to participate in this program with me. So, yeah. But I leave that up to them. It's their choice. It's their choice. I don't enforce it. And it's their choice by whether or not they are showing me that they're listening to and reading, opening the emails and the newsletters. That's how I make that decision. So, okay.
My other question would be, once we start getting this money, I know for myself, obviously I don't want to do things for people and spread this money out, but I don't necessarily have a worldwide plan of exactly what I want to do. But my thought is, if there was a way to get that more of us could get together, there might be others that have a really good plan that you would like to back with your money. Is there any plans for getting, having a way for this community to, get together with each other,
Oh, absolutely.
On a website or something? Or,
well, listen, once the funds start coming forward, I'm going to start doing a different type of a training and workshop program, and you can't use the excuse that you don't have the money and you can't afford it to come. That is not an excuse. So we'll set up further training programs. We'll bring you in, and we'll probably maybe have 300-400 people at a time, and we'll go through a couple days of training sessions and purpose and why it is. And it's important to know we're never going to force you to do anything that you don't want to do. It's always your choice, but we're saying, here it is. This is what we see. If you want to be a part of where we're going, this is where we're going. And I think I'm in pretty good shape in understanding the purpose of the funds, if you want to go with the flow of this. You want to go off and live on your own private island by yourself? Go ahead. Good luck. To me, that's where you're doing some pretty low energy work, and it's going to come back and bite you in the butt. That's my opinion. So, I think here's the reality. When you sign this new affidavit form, you are giving the funders the ability to watch how you spend your money. That's part of the requirement. If you don't like that, then go find someone else, because that's part of the requirement. Now, I don't know this for certain, but I would think that there is a high probability that they're going to be watching how people spend their money. And if they display it's only about them and them alone, and they are not basically putting it to work, I would say their money's done. Those who show that they're acting in a responsible manner, they're moving the money around, they're putting the money to work, they're using it for self-improvement, growth, and education, I think it's pretty safe to say that money will never stop. So do you want the money to keep coming, or do you just want a one shot? It's your choice. And that's how we make the decisions. We make the decisions not enforcing things upon people, but letting them make their own decisions and show us that they want to be a part of a larger program for a greater good. And those that want to be a part of a larger program for a greater good, their money won't stop. Now, that's as of now. That's how it's been explained to me. Okay?
Okay. Well,
okay.
Thanks,
well,
Dave.
Before you go, I didn't get your name. What's your name here?
Oh, my name's Mark.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Great questions. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Have a great night.
Okay. I'm going to go over and take a couple email questions. It says, could you please update us on the MetaOne Bank Exchange release date of the MetaOne coin to the public, and also will we be able to move our exchange funds into MetaOne Bank? I don't have a date. They've extended this a little longer than what I thought, but what I'm still being told, it could be any time in the next 4 to 6 weeks. The MetaOne coin will go public, and once it goes public, you don't get the introductory rate anymore. And absolutely yes, you can move the exchange ones into MetaOne Bank. We highly encourage you to do that, and we would love to have you do that. So that's a very strong yes question on that, okay? Now, let's see, one other thing. There was a question here that, that was a weird question. I mean, the way that responded. It says, is there a possibility Trump is waiting on the prosecutions to begin for the sealed indictments for the release of these funds? I have no idea, folks. I have no idea. Remember, sealed indictments and the recent release of the funds, that's a U.S. issue when this is an international issue. So I don't have any idea at all of what he's doing on that. So, well, Blanca's still screening, folks, so I'll take one more email. That one, that's another issue. So, okay. So Blanca is in the process of dealing with someone from area code 214. Let's see. I think she just finished. So I'll go in there and let's see. We've got Michael from area code 214. Michael, you're on the air. What can we help you with?
Hey Dave, how you doing?
Good.
Can you hear me good?
Yep, hear you just fine.
All right. I wanted to ask you about earlier. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, you said some money had moved from the high levels down to the lower levels, and I think you had said that the money had moved to fund the TRN, the Treasury note.
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
So how is how's that going to work? Don't you think that's going to take a long time to get that going? Or
I have no idea. I don't know those details. I don't know those logistics. All I know is that we had gotten word that Hong Kong had released money on January 2nd, and then we were assuming it was our money. And after about 10 days to 2 weeks of nothing happening, I basically called up another individual, and he said, no, that money was not for us. That was not our money. That was to release funds to put into place to be able to move it into backing up the TRNs. Now, how long that takes, the logistics, I have no idea. I don't know. That's what it was told, and that's all that I know. So.
I mean, essentially, they're gonna have. I mean, that's gonna have to be a big old deal. You have to reprint all of the paper money, right?
No, you don't. And here's why. Now let me explain this to you why. There's a world of difference about money being asset-backed at the very top level of the banks versus our level of the retail level. At our level, at the retail level, when we walk into a store, at the end of the day, we don't care if it's FRNs, TRNs, or what it is. If I've got a $20 bill, I just want it to spend like a $20 bill, and I want my change back and know I can spend that somewhere else. That's all I care about, and that's at the retail level. That's all that we are. The money, at the very top level, I was told it was asset-backed at the top level 8 months to a year ago. Already there, it had already started back then at that level. Now, this stuff may be what's moving into maybe a level or two down from that. So I don't know those logistics. But you and I don't have to have a TRN piece of paper when 95% of our money is digital. That can happen overnight. Digital money can. See? And you can also basically, the government could decide all the currency that is out there right now is going to be turned over to being asset-backed, even though it says Federal Reserve Note at the top. There's all kinds of things that they can do, how they want to do this. And I don't know how they're going to do it. I have no idea. That's their business, not mine.
What about the 21 trillion this country's supposedly in debt? I mean, how is that going to transform it just asset back and TRN to pay some of it off, or what do you think about that?
Well, I've been told, some of the sources says that most of the countries are going to be relieved of their debt. There's going to be a debt relief that comes forward as well. But here's the thing is, we hear so many stories about this, and right now they're just stories. I don't have tangible information on that I can back it up with. It's just stories. When the Dragon family has multiple accounts that has 40 zeros in it, what are you worried about? What are we worried about? That's the kind of money that.
Hold on. What do you think happened to all the Inca and Aztec gold and all that gold that they, for a couple hundred years?
That is peanuts. That's peanuts of this much versus this much that the families have. That is nothing compared to what the families have. All the gold of the history that is in our history is probably less than 1% of what the family has. That's how much they have. The gold the Incas had was nothing. The gold that the Egyptians had was nothing. It was just a very, very small amount. And first of all, remember, they did not have the technology to mine all this gold, but the Anunnaki did. They had a vast advanced technology to mine gold that's beyond anything of what we have today. And the massive amounts that they had. And it's out there, but it's not public. So remember, we live in there's the shadow world versus the conventional world. And the conventional world is seldom right when it comes to this stuff. The information that's been given to us is seldom correct. Does that make sense?
So you think, yeah, I understand. Do you think that Hong Kong is going to release some more money to get the regular currency exchanges that we're all in, to get those kicked off?
I don't know when Hong Kong's going to do this. I don't have any more details other than what I've shared with you. You're asking questions that I don't have answers to when it comes to... I've already shared with you basically everything that I know.
Changes every 2 weeks.
What's that?
It seems like it changes every 2 weeks.
It does.
I mean, it's just...
I should say that...
Everybody gets all excited, and then kind of like everybody just floats back down.
It depends on your stories, who you're listening to. The stories change every 2 weeks, but the facts don't. The inside doesn't. It's these stories that start floating around, so it all depends on who are you listening to. Whose stories are you listening to? Huh?
I'm listening to you.
Yeah, and I give you
the
I give you the information as I receive it, and that's all that I can do. And I don't have the full complete depth because they aren't talking. They aren't giving us everything. Okay? And sometimes it changes because we have a misperception, or basically it's like what I said when I did say a couple of weeks ago that I was told the money, on January 2nd moved. It did, but I wasn't told the full story, and then I came back a week or two later and I corrected that. See, I always try to correct information if what I find out of what I said that wasn't correct. But if you don't listen all the time, you wouldn't know that. So, okay. Anything else we can help you with tonight?
No, just keep trying to, find out more information, keep us going.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
All right. Okay.
All
Thanks
right.
a lot.
Good
Okay.
night.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to the next person here on the list. His name is Marco from 949. Marco, you're on the air. What can we help you with tonight?
Yes, I am. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Good.
Yeah. Look, I have a quick question. I was in kind of a workshop like about a year ago by now, and of course I'm planning to attend to the February 2nd. But when I turn in the paperwork in that workshop at that time, I have my passport, and by now that passport expired, and I have the new one. So what we have to do in these cases? We're gonna have to redo all the paperwork, or
you'll be able to update your information when it comes time to start processing. We'll send it out and we'll say, gee, if you've had anything that's changed, let us know. This is like, if your passport expired or something like that, we'll take care of it at that time. Don't worry about it now. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Sounds good. I have a few other questions, but I will do it when I saw you down here in Sedona.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to go to an email question. Okay, it says, thanks for the update where the history of the exchange. Please explain how Trump, Putin, and Xi are involved in the funding. I'm not clear on why they are needed to actualize the program. Any information on this would be helpful. Because they have the guns. They have the political and military power that could stop the money from moving across money wires and from country to country. They can shut down the whole financial system for the money to move. That's why you need them. See, it's back what the family says. We have the money, but we don't have the guns, and guns can stop money from moving, i.e. what I call military power. And so that's why they needed the cooperation from those three leaders, because those are the leaders of the dominant military powers here on the planet. So, okay, I hope that makes sense. All right, so then let's see. We have one more gentleman we'll go to here. His name is Paul from area code 702. Paul, you're on the air. What can we help you with tonight?
Hi, Dave. It's Paul, and I'm actually in Reno getting ready to step out for my evening exercise. But, I got a question for you about some info that you gave us earlier this month about the affidavit. You said there were 4 areas that were no-go for spending. Could you enumerate the 4 again for us, please?
Well, I don't remember the 4th one, but number 1, you can't be involved in drug dealing. Number 2, you can't be involved in any type of terrorist activity. Number 3 is that you can't be purchasing casinos or those types of operations. And I forgot what the 4th one was. I don't remember right off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, anything that's criminal activity.
Yeah. You can't be involved in any known criminal activity. If they see you're involved in criminal activity with your money, they have the right to come in and basically, to take it from you and to throw you in jail.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dave. Thanks for everything you're doing. I'll say goodnight now.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay. Well, Blanca, that looks like it's it.
I know people just kind of jump on like popcorn, but
yeah, they do. They kind of jump on at the last moment, and that's okay. And I've taken care of all of the emails that have come in. Let me just look really quickly here on Facebook. It says, can you put the currency exchange in the Meta One Bank? Absolutely. Absolutely you can. Of course you would. And as I said, we would encourage you to do that. And here's why. If you get a large sum of money, let's say you have an account at a Bank of America account, and all of a sudden you got $10 million put into that account. What's going to happen to the teller when you walk into the bank and she says, where'd you get this $10 million? And she goes out and starts talking with all of her friends behind the scene and you don't know it, you see. Or the fact that, they're going to be questioning where you got all this money. If you place it into the Meta One Bank, this is the bank that all the board members that are on Meta One are also very much a part of what I do here. This is basically a bank that is helping us in this process. So you're putting the money in a bank that's a safe bank. They're aware of it. Now, Meta One Bank is not going to be a normal commercial lending bank. They aren't going to be out making loans. They will have, a checking account that you can move your money through. They will have debit card services that you can move your money through. But it's pretty much going to be basically an electronic bank, not a hands-on brick and mortar bank. There will be some branches, but it will be fully, what they will have is that MetaBank will have cooperating contracts with other well-known banks to do those banking services. It's basically a bank where you want to store your discretionary money. And you can have it in the form of, money in the bank account. You can have your coins in the bank account, etc. and stuff like that. So it's designed to basically be a full service operation to help us make this shift and transition. So, okay, that's it. Blanca, what else do you have to share with us before we wrap up tonight? Where did
Hello?
There you are. I said, where'd you go? Tell us your.
Well, it sounds like a lot of people are interested in the Meta One Bank, so that's good, and I'm glad people know about it and are thinking about putting their funds there. That's pretty exciting.
Well, as I mentioned this, I think it was 2 weeks ago, is what's really great is, see, when I have the funds, I have to get them to you. Now, there's two ways to do it. I can do it on a money wire, or I can use what is called a pay order. But either way, your money's going to show up and be put into your bank where you bank now, whatever bank you want. With Meta One, to make it be more secure and more private, we can set you up an account with Meta One Bank. We place the funds in that account, and then we issue you what is called a black debit card. Now, these are cards that have an unlimited spending capacity on them. I mean, you could go out and buy $1 million house with one of these cards if you wanted to. And then that way, the money is there. It's available for you. It's at your disposal of when you want it, but it's in a very safe place that the world doesn't know about what's going on except those that are in that bank, and they're all a part of what we're doing here. So there's a real win-win scenario in being able to do it that way. And I've had those conversations with Robert, and he says, yes, by the time the funds come, we will be ready to move forward with that. So, yeah. All right. Anything else?
I think that's it for tonight. For me, no?
I think it is too.
Pretty good.
It tells me I got around 7.5 minutes left, but we can finish a few minutes earlier, can't we, tonight? So, all right. Well then,
I think so.
Thank you very much, Blanca. And then, folks, we again, just to mention, we'll be in Santa Ana a week from Saturday, 2 weeks after that in St. Louis, and then the week after that in Sedona. And we would always love to have you. And remember, folks, if you can't afford to come to the workshops, remember I have the scholarship rates, and all you have to do is go on the site and just send a request that we would love to have you there as much as possible, because you get the full information. We can ask a lot more questions, and there's more information that I can share with you there. So, and we have about 20 to 25 seats left in Santa Ana. So if you want to do that, you should probably sign up very soon. So, all right. With that, then I think we're ready to call it quits for the night and the evening. So there's the jingle. Thanks a lot, folks. We'll see you next week.